This lecture is Cupping Controversial Coffees, and it is meant to be provocative. Hey there, friends. This is Adam with Rock at SCA.Training and How To Coffee Pro. I wanted to introduce real quick to you the resources that are available and the next series of leadership topics. So first off, if you haven't been to rock.coffee, go ahead and go over there, check out. We have a lab with lots of tools. It'll also point you to SCA.Training and How To Coffee Pro if you're thinking about courses or supplies for those courses. So you can find grinders, equipment, Jean Lenoir, Linné products, and even this consulting package. If you're a green coffee seller or roaster, I'd love to help you out on that with feedback and analysis. So if you'd like to go over to How To Coffee Pro and get started on an SCA certified course, these are enrolling online, continuous enrolling on demand with your schedule, and then coaching and cohort calls. You can get certified in all 6 of these modules online. I would love to help you from that, from 0 to pro. And we do have intermediate and professional options available at SCA.Training. We specifically have some professional courses that are coming up. Just jump on over to the lab, however you navigate there, and you'll see those listed at the end of 2022 here as we're speaking. We also have Q graders coming up in Ethiopia, Addis, lots of training kits, so great stuff at SCA.Training. But specifically today, we are going to be jumping into the blog. So you can go ahead and head on over to the blog here or scroll on down, and we will be talking about our leadership series. So I can't wait to share with you more and help you keep growing and making life better using coffee. All right, let's dive in. So, controversial coffees. I'll explain what I mean by that. This was a presentation that was given at Coffee Fest in Seattle, Washington, October 1st, 2022. So I'm going to share back, and my name is Adam Carpenter. I'm the founder and lead AST at Rock Coffee Company. So welcome. Thanks for coming to this session, and I'm excited to unpack this topic together with you today. We're all learning and growing to develop better coffee cupping and sensory skills. So this is a safe place for us to grow, learn, and ask questions. This is one of 3 sessions that I delivered at Coffee Fest in the Pacific Northwest 2022. I had a developing and maintaining coffee training programs, how to get the best from your beans, roasting sample to profile to production, talked about scaling, and then this one, cupping controversial coffees. It had a tagline, cupping fine Robusta and special processed commercial grade, things that don't normally fit on the SCA cupping form. So if you're interested in any of these other sessions, or if you'd like to connect, I would be really happy to hear from you. This session has an accompanying PDF, which you can find in the links on this video or blog or post, wherever you might be engaging with this content. I also would love to offer you discount codes for my Specialty Coffee Association courses. I am an SCA trainer. That's what AST stands for, Authorized SCA Trainer. So those are available online to get started, and then offline for your advanced, intermediate, and professional levels. I have training kits available at SCA.Training, as well as coffee tools and equipment at rock.coffee. So lots of places to find me and connect. I can't wait to helping you and your team grow. So my introduction is that I really want to approach this time with humility. I know that in the crowd and those of you watching this presentation, there will be coffee experts with greater experiences, with more dynamic and close at hand experiences that are beyond my own. So I am presenting this from the position of knowledge that I have today at the date of presentation and recording, but I'm always learning and leaning into the topics. I want to be challenged and to grow, put myself into those hard positions where I am being tested So no matter where you are in that journey, if you're at zero, if you're at pro level, we are all on this path pointing in that direction of growth together. So I appreciate your grace and patience as I unpack this, and I extend the same to you, as we should to one another in the group. I said, my name's Adam, and I love helping people grow. I love helping businesses grow, and people run businesses. Our vision at Rock is to use training and tools to build community, a global coffee community, and to provide a playground to make life better. What happens on a playground? We run, we try, we push ourselves, we test ourselves, and we grow when we do that. So community and playground. I grew up on a small farm in Michigan. I drank Folgers Instant coffee crystals with my father and with my grandfather before we would go out to work. And they worked hard. I wanted to be like them. And it wasn't until later in university when I had the chance to go on a cross-cultural trip for 3 weeks to Costa Rica and Guatemala that I had the chance to stay with a Costa Rican coffee family on their farm. We would pick coffee cherries by day and go play football or go to the discoteca at night. I was much better at football than I was dancing. But when I could see how coffee was the fruit of a farmer's labor, how it was so close to the earth and to the ground, it resonated with me as a farm boy from the United States growing up in the Midwest. So later, when my wife and I married, we went to China. We started teaching English there in central China. And I knew I didn't want to teach English forever, so I started a business. I started an artisan coffee roastery in central China, specifically Wuhan. So that's what ROC is, Roasters of Central China. It's an acronym for Wuhan's first artisan roastery in 2012. From that roastery, we sold wholesale, opened up 2 cafes, did retail. We had a takeout window and a full coffee discovery bar. And then I started training with the SCAE, the European Specialty Coffee Association, in 2015 as an AST. So traveling all over China, delivering content in English and Mandarin Chinese, I was helping our former customers and even competitors to grow their team, to grow their skills, to get certified and grow their businesses. And so in coming back to the U.S., that's where I have continued to be in the education, training, and coaching space. If you're interested, I'd love to connect with you and help your team to grow. Besides helping people and businesses to grow, I love to cup coffees. I've always been kind of at heart that farm boy roaster with an engineering mindset where I love to be a part of that roasting, product development, and then quality control and cupping. So I was always afraid, though, with cupping to approach the SCA cupping form. The SCA cupping form has a lot of scales and measures and intensity and descriptions, and you have to do a lot of this in one moment when you're sipping or smelling or tasting. And so in the beginning, I would have this fear and doubt in my mind that said, you know, you're missing something, you're probably doing it wrong. How do you know you're right? There's always this creeping suspicion. And that's true for anyone in a sensory occupation. And that's okay. We should not pay attention to that as a crippling fear. We should pay attention to that because it informs us that we do not have all the answers, but we are the collective. And when we share in a group as a collective, that is the best perspective of something. So if you think about something in the center, each one of us comes looking from a different point of reference, tasting and smelling from a different point of reference, our childhood, our experiences, our culture, our palates, and each of us combining those sensory descriptions, those sensory attributes, those sensory observations, then we get the full picture, that 360-degree picture. And so don't worry if you're just over here looking at it and you feel like you have such a limited view. That's because you do. However, it doesn't mean your view is wrong. You could be in need of calibration, but you have a unique view that the group can benefit from. So I love cupping coffees, and especially when I'm with good people and I get to cup with them. It's much better cupping together rather than alone. So let's dive into our topic, cupping controversial coffees. So I wanted to introduce our 6 coffees that we have today. These coffees were intentionally selected to push the boundaries of the SCA cupping form, kind of stretching us to go outside of the normal portfolio of green coffee that our roastery buys, or the normal portfolio that we order as a cafe from the roaster. We get stuck in often a narrow range of coffees that we have access to. And so hopefully some of these coffees today will break us outside and just expand that coffee worldview. So first off, we want to address the fact that the SCA cupping form was developed for washed Arabica coffees. And that's very specific because in the world of coffees, there are many other processing methods and there are other species. So we try to use this form as well for dry and natural Arabicas, or honey Arabicas, or semi-washed and experimental Arabicas. But the reality is the cupping form was first developed for a washed Arabica. Doesn't mean it's wrong or not useful, but there are certain boundaries and limitations because of that in the way that we score our coffees. Also, on the tables today, we will have 3 Robusta Canephora coffees, and so those have a different cupping form. I'll put a link in the show notes and description for that because some of the attributes are not present in Robusta Canephora. We don't have the acidity and the sweetness in the same way, or hardly in the same measure, but we might have other aspects in terms of how we rate the finish of the cup, if it's metallic or sharp, or how the cup may or may not have a salty characteristic to it. So the Robusta cupping form is different. And I will use the word Robusta and Canephora interchangeably. Accurately, we could say Cafea Arabica and Cafea Canephora, but often we just say Arabica and Robusta, or Arabica Canephora. So after we smell and taste our coffees, we're going to come back together. We have them set out on the table. We're using standard SCA cupping protocols for them. And then we'll review back our basic concepts with species and grade, processing and roast impacts. If time permits, we will calibrate our cupping results together. So SCA forms are optional, and hopefully we can calibrate together with ongoing. Calibration is like an ongoing exercise. Keeps us fit. Fitness in cupping. Okay, so our coffees today, we have 3 Robusta Canephoras and 3 coffee Arabicas. So I pulled up here a few of these for the presentation's sake. We have a high quality organic India bean from the Araku Valley. It is dry, natural processed. Okay, so here is our Robusta dry natural India, Araku Valley. It's organic, and I use the word dry and natural process together because it's a dry process. We're not using water, and it's also called natural. So other languages in Chinese, we used to always say rusai, which was sun-dried, or ziren, which was natural. It has different implications. We also have a fine Vietnam Lam Dong Central Highlands. This one is described as a winey process. It's very pretty. If you look at it, it's very pretty compared to the Robusta the India that I just showed you. Both of them, you can kind of see that natural dry process color on them. This is a really clean coffee, very clean Robusta coffee. And then finally we have Uganda Screen 15. I don't have that here with me. On our Arabica table, we have a commercial grade India, a Kent Timor Blend. And this is a fun, special coffee. It's very unique. It has strains of Timor, Tafarikella, and Catamor. And, it's part of the genes of the Liberica. So I had to look up that Tafarikella, and that's where some of the Kent and other varieties are named. Okay, So this one is our commercial grade, and then I've roasted up all of the specialty grade anaerobic honey Honduras and anaerobic wet hold Sumatra. So we are really pushing. We've got wet hold and honey and dry natural processed. These do not fit within that washed Arabica. And then we have specialty and commercial grade anaerobic, dry natural, Robusta. So all of this is kind of floating outside of that form. And these coffees are very different. A lot of people, if they have experience, we did some Q&A introductions during the course. Why did you come to this course? A lot of people came to the course because they wanted to taste Robusta Canephora by itself as a single origin. So many times when we experience Robusta coffees, they are blended. And they can be blended well, and they have great applications, especially for espresso and traditional Italian espresso blends. But seldom do we get them on their own, unless it might be like a Vietnamese coffee, which then is extremely dark roasted, and seldom do you get to taste the terroir and the green aspects of the coffee. So, coffee and sensory rules. Let's just cover this a little bit here. So regardless of the audience, I always want to ensure that we're on the same page with cupping protocols. We will adhere to the SCA cupping protocols linked in the show notes and at the blog. These are their free PDF that you can get from my website, SCA Training, or you can find them online. So these are practiced around the world, and we want to adhere to what people are doing in Vietnam, in Honduras, in Sumatra, so that we are practicing the same roasting levels, the same grinding standard, the same agtron color, the same aspects to water temperature ratios, so that we are having a similar cupping sensory experience at our roastery cafe location as they were at the point of production or import export. But beyond that, I always like to throw out some house rules on etiquette, cupping etiquette. So a big part of cupping is the atmosphere. My house rules, they are from personal experience, I'll say personal pet peeves, but also just things that I've seen good cupping labs, good cupping sessions have in common. So much of it is about the atmosphere. And when people come into a cupping room or a cupping lab, or when we have a cupping, people can change or strengthen and protect the atmosphere. So we're avoiding bad habits and personalized preferences that interfere with other people's proper cupping experiences. Okay, so we don't want to interfere with the environment. We also don't want to interfere with other people. Here's a few examples. We want to affirm that this is a judgment-free zone, that we are collaborating and not competing. So while dress and clipboards and cupping forms and lab aprons can make us look official, they're also appropriate for protecting the atmosphere. But we don't come in a competition manner. Who can fill out the fastest or who has the best answers, okay? We don't want to whistle when we slurp, creating drama, loud noises, drawing attention to ourselves. It doesn't make the coffee somehow more clear and evident in your mouth if your slurping is extremely loud. One of the best cuppers, and he was a roasting champion in China, good friend of mine. He was the quietest cupper. He would take this tiny little sip and just put it into his mouth. He was also extremely disciplined. He would eat vegetables for months before his competitions. And so it's not about slurping. It's about your training. So don't draw attention to yourself. It also pressures other people. Then they try to slurp, and then people are choking and coughing because they suck coffee down the wrong tube. Anyways, we're trying to maintain a non-disturbing area. Restraining from moving the cups. I see so many people that love to pick up the cups and they hit them and they try to knock all the fragrance out so that they get the biggest whiff of fragrance, and then they put it back and they're making all this noise, and then the fragrance is gone for the next people. Everyone just bows down to the cups. We bring ourselves to the cups in humility, and we don't shake them and disturb the cups or the grounds. We don't move too slowly. so that everyone can have a chance. If too much time is spent on you and your cup just because it's hard, or you're having trouble with a set, or you're new to this, you're preventing the other people from having the exposure to that temperature or that time and freshness. So we just all need to move at a regular rhythm. And whether you finish it or not, just keep on moving and you'll get it next time. Don't worry. That's how practice comes in. We also don't want to move too fast and push up and bump against people. When you're pushing and sticking your nose out or sticking your spoon across the table, you're interfering with their space. Again, we want to protect this space, protect the environment for everyone to have an equal opportunity. That includes if you're super slow and a beginner. That includes if you're really intense and moving fast. Using a dispensing cup or 2 spoons, one might be designated to dip, and then you pour it into your spoon, and then the other one you slurp from. So this spoon over here, my red spoon, is danger. It always goes in my mouth, and my blue spoon is community. That one always goes in the cup, and I just transfer over and sip. So you can use a two spoon method. You can also spoon in and then pour into a cup and drink from your cup, or you're with a group of people that you recognize and you can share from the same cups. So we're sensitive to transferring, not transferring our germs. Keeping our thoughts and reflections to ourselves. We don't speak out. We don't say, we don't make noises to insinuate this cup might be surprising or disgusting or confusing. And then we want to attempt to use the cupping form. Even if you use a simplified SCA cupping form where you're just writing some notes, you're starting to take some general measures, these things take repetition, and iteration creates strength in cupping muscles. So let's have fun and cup these coffees. All right, so everyone goes and cups their coffee. Now it's time to share the feedback. Now, it won't be a perfect calibration, and during this cupping, I failed to fill out a cupping form because I was busy answering questions, talking about coffees, directing traffic, pouring the water, and it's a community event. So we'll do calibration next time. But here's some feedback that we got. So the organic India Araku Valley Robusta Canaphora coffee was marked with, and I should say, I roasted all of these Robustas lighter than I would on normal production or espresso blending because I wanted them to display some of the attributes they have, but they were very much like a medium roast, which for Robusta is very light. Somewhere between first and second crack is very light for Robusta. You generally need to roast it darker. It's a very dense bean, and you need to get past a lot of those harsh flavors. So this one was organic India, was earthy, corn nuts, smoke, roasty, phenol, green grass, metallic, and nutty. Okay, so very classic but nice, useful Robusta. I used to buy this coffee, not specifically from the Araku Valley. I don't know where it came from, but I would buy a dry processed Indian Robusta coffee when I was in China, and I would blend it into my espresso at a 10%. I would do 30% Colombia, 30 washed, 30% Guatemala washed, 30% Ethiopia Yirgacheffe G2 washed, and a 10% India natural processed Robusta. So when you dark roast this, it has a totally different character, but it really keeps that earthy corn nut kind of quality. Phenol is, we'll just compare it to chlorine, like if you get pool water or like that feeling and smell or taste of chlorine in a swimming pool. Green grass and metallic, so those are kind of aligned there. But yes, very earthy. This Vietnam Lam Dong winey, we got good praise from this one, and I do think this coffee is very praiseworthy. It's so intense that it's super hard to use as a single origin, but it has the qualities of dry fruit, fig, peanuts, hazelnut, dark chocolate, and it is more mellow than the India. So it has a more brew-like characteristic. You drink a whole cup of that Organic India Araku Valley Robusta, and it's going to punch you in the face because it is really strong. The Uganda Screen 15, this is kind of a classic, not really the fine grade. I would put the Organic India Araku Valley as a fine Robusta. It's kind of a low fine. The Vietnam Lam Dong winey is a very fine Robusta coffee. I really like it, and I paid a great price for it because it is well done. The Uganda Screen 15 was metallic, bitter, oil, petroleum, rubber. This is just like classic Uganda coffee Robusta that I've had so many other times. And this is like what happens when you don't intentionally add processing to help it out, or sorting and cleaning to really help it out. This is just classic Robusta profile. But not bad. Super useful if you roast it dark and blend it into your espresso coffees. Arabica now. The Arabica Commercial India, the Kent Timor Blend. This one right here, it is aged. I can even smell it. It's earthy, woody, tamarind, spice, orange, bell pepper, and cherry. It has that aged aspect to it, and smells a little bit woody like straw. If you have a Lait du Café, totally just straight up smells like the straw in the Lait du Café. And not bad, but it would not score 80 points on our cupping form. We didn't score, and we wouldn't score the Robusta coffees, the first three, on the SCA cupping form. But this one we can, because it's an Arabica. It's an Arabica blend of these coffees. And the problem that would keep it from scoring is it wouldn't receive high quality aroma fragrance scores with earth and wood and bell pepper. Those just aren't high. And so that would, not give it a lot, but it's also super low in acidity. This coffee basically doesn't have acidity. And so you'd get a really poor acidity score. Maybe you'll say it has universal sweetness, or maybe you'll say there's no sweetness. And so if there was no sweetness, that would deduct 10 points immediately, because there's not a lot of sweetness left. It's not only that the coffee is like this, it's also past crop. So it's extra woody. Now, the specialty anaerobic honey Honduras and the wet hold Sumatra, these were super fine coffees. The honey Honduras, I would probably put it around at 86, 87, while that wet hold Sumatra could easily get at 88, 89. It was really nice. The fruity, bright, high lemon citrus acidity in the Honduras was awesome. It was super sweet. But it was almost just like pure lemon citrus. And so even though you have a super high acidity, you want it to be complemented with complexity. So you don't want super high simple, you want high complex. And that Sumatra had a high complex acidity, where I felt like we were getting cheese and tobacco and herbal sweet. There was like this tartaric, balsamic, grape-like, and it was apple malic, and it definitely had lemon citrus. And so you had this complexity of acid while it's high, which gives it a really big score. And so it would really beat out the Honduras in that area. Both of them had great body. The Sumatra was just super syrupy. Whenever I get like a coffee that just feels like it's liquid sugar and syrupy, it's going to score high on my cupping form. So these coffees are really pushing close to that 90. I mean, that Sumatra could probably get 90 from a number of people. And the Honduras is also very high, while that Kent Timor India blend would be below 80 points. So that was our goal, was just to kind of push the boundaries of our form there. So let's talk about coffee species. In general, Arabica coffees will have much more sweetness and acidity than the equivalent Robusta Canephora. And so if I had like a fresh India Arabica and a fresh India Robusta Canephora, I would definitely see, and I have had this in the past, I would see that Arabica India has much more sweetness. It has lower body, it's less bitter, but it has more sweetness and acidity. So both of these coffees, no matter where they're grown, they're part of the same family, which is Rubiaceae, and they're unique in their species. And so these different species of coffees grow in different areas. They evolved in different areas, but they both are coffee trees that bear coffee fruit with coffee seeds inside and will replicate a coffee tree. However, the as you can see on the Cafe Imports coffee family tree, I love the old one in its simplicity, but the new one has so much visual richness and resources that you can extract from it. Those are available. I'll link the PDFs as well to the show notes. Those are free downloads. Our understanding of Arabica is that it naturally evolved in Ethiopia, while the Robusta canephora was a little further southwest on the borders of Uganda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Sorry, that was a mouthful. So since they grow in different regions and also at different elevations, the coffee flavor profiles are very different. We're also going to unpack a few of these different aspects that give them attributes that we will see play out in the cup. So I'll unpack these each a little bit. We have the different distinctions of our Caffea species. So R on the left-hand side for Robusta canephora, A on the right-hand side for Arabica. So our Robusta coffee will grow at lower elevations. It can grow near sea level and maybe up to 800 meters above sea level. So generally it's going to grow at a lower elevation, and I'll just tack this right on to the general temperature range is higher, 22 to 30 degrees Celsius. So that's pretty warm. That's like 70s and 80s. I'd have to check 22. I don't do Celsius centigrade temperature as well as I do Fahrenheit. However, Arabica grows at a much higher elevation. It prefers to grow, maybe starting at 800, and it can push up above 2,000 meters above sea level. What happens as you go higher up, you generally get lower temperatures, especially those nighttime temperatures. They'll fall down into the, 60s with 16 degrees Celsius to 24 degrees Celsius. So hopefully we have less time exposure for the sun so that we're not getting such intense heat. We also have just higher elevation, and so the air and the wind and other elements will just have this greater cooling and nighttime cooling effect. Robusta coffees have a high disease resistance, and I'm going to go ahead and jump down there too. They have an extremely high caffeine content. So that caffeine content and disease resistance are very correlated because caffeine is bitter, and it's a plant's natural defense against pest and disease and bacteria in the wild. So plants that grow caffeine, the Caffea species is just one of many. The Caffea family is just one of many plants that grow caffeine as a natural deterrent against pest. So with 2 to 4.5% of that bean mass being caffeine, it's extremely high. It's even in the plants, the root, the bark, the stem, the leaves, and the fruit. Caffeine is in the coffee tree. Arabica, on the other hand, has a low disease resistance, which means that it can, it can get disease easier. Bacteria or pests can harm it. And you can see there it has a lower caffeine content of 1 to 1.8%. I've seen 1 to 2. Generally, people say that Robusta canephora coffee is 2 to 3 times as caffeinated as Arabica. And pro tip, that's not in the slides here, but that's how these Death Wish and super caffeine companies, that's how one of the ways that they do it is you blend in Robusta coffees. So about 40% of world production is Robusta. That can vary somewhere between 30, 35 and 40, 45. And then likewise, the remainder is primarily Arabica. So 55, 60, 65%. On any given year, it will fluctuate because coffee is a biennial producing fruit, and every other year should have a better harvest than the one prior. So good big harvest, smaller harvest, big harvest, smaller harvest, but that averages out across the world. You might ask about other coffee species. They at most make up 1 to 2% of world production because they're just not grown commercially like we do Robusta and Arabica. Now, the Robusta coffee tree has fewer chromosomes, 22 chromosomes. This is a new area for me. I haven't studied it in depth, but the complexity of that Arabica bean and coffee with 44 chromosomes, I think there's a correlation there. Again, I need to research that before I put it in video. Fetching lower prices on the market versus higher prices in the market. So we pay less for Robusta when we can grow it low on flat ground, harvest it with machines, and the beans are bigger and they produce more, then it's just going to be cheaper. It's not as rare as the high mountain, hand-picked, meticulously sorted, smaller yielding crops in Arabica. For high quality Robusta, we designate it fine. For high quality Arabica, we designate it specialty. Different cupping forms, as I said. The general shape of a Robusta bean, as you can see in the slides, if you're looking at the slideshow, it's more round. It has a flat, straight center cut and a flat face. Whereas the shape of the Arabica bean is more ovular. It has this kind of S or curved center cut, and it'll have kind of a curved face. And so the Arabica bean will be more curved, whereas the Robusta bean will be more flat if you laid it flat on the table. The aroma of Robusta, we've already said this, earthy, spicy, intense, offensive. The acidity is low, body is high, and it can be salty. The aroma of an Arabica is generally delicate, floral, fruity, nutty in comparison, with an acidity and sweetness higher and more dynamic. Now, these are certainly influenced by roasting, processing, and other impacts. So just jumping right into that next section, we can't just say all Robusta coffees will taste or smell this way and Arabicas will taste and cup this way, because they can be roasted effectively or not effectively. They can be processed in very different ways. First off, because coffee is so dynamic and complex, we don't want to set rules around it like that. But what we can definitely see, like with that Vietnamese winey processed natural dry coffee, it very much had this dry fruit aspect to it that we would expect from like some natural processed coffees elsewhere that are Arabica. And the commercial Kent Timor was very much, it cupped like a not so bitter Robusta Canephora. All of these can change. If we wash a coffee or natural dry process it, if we use anaerobic processing, we can influence the flavor characteristics dramatically from these coffees. So as I was writing and thinking about this, I really feel like processing, and you'll see this in literature and presentations all over now, processing is a big wave in coffee and specialty coffee that we're in right now. We've gone through various waves, and so processing is experiencing a new wave. Whether it's a second or third wave, I'm not so sure. But traditionally, coffee processing was just a direct outflow of the natural resources that were available. So those natural resources that were available, if a place had dynamic resources in water, then washed coffee could be easily produced. If it had great sun and drying conditions, maybe flat land to lay the coffees out on, then natural dry processing was very common. So what we're seeing today is that traditional regions that were dry processing areas, like in Africa, Ethiopia, they're starting to wash more coffees and even do honey processing and anaerobic processing. In places like Sumatra, that would always do a wet hold processing. Now they're doing some raised bed drying, and they generally have to do it under tarps because they get a lot of rain. It's unpredictable. But they're doing more natural dry processed coffees. And so places are trying to augment with the not traditional method, which is creating new experiences and kind of breaking down our expectations and stereotypes that we had of these coffee growing regions. So you might expect a Sumatra coffee to be chocolatey, low acid, big body, smooth, and that was traditionally just a wet hold Sumatra Indonesia coffee. Now we're getting these anaerobic wet hold coffees with, cheese and Tabasco and fruit and acidity, and it's kind of blowing our minds. We'd never guessed that was a Sumatran coffee. If someone just brewed it and gave it to us, or if someone ground it and let us smell it. So with these new waves, it's very exciting that we get to expand our sensory expectations, and it's going to lead to developments in understanding or using the SCA cupping form as well. I have seen that the SCA is working on and preparing to release a new cupping form or protocol, and they've been working closely with the Coffee Quality Institute, CQI. So as of the fall of 2022, I am expecting to see that in the next few months here. It's going to be exciting. So I don't want to speak too much about roasting. I could go on about that, and I do in plenty other videos. But the goal of a roaster here is we're receiving these coffees. They've been processed to a certain aspect or quality. And the goal of my work as a roaster is to protect that work and to exemplify what is in the bean. So if I do my roasting job accurately, I am going to display what that coffee that was grown in Honduras was capable of, especially when it was honey anaerobic processed. So I'm going to bring that out so that it can be experienced in the cup. What I would do potentially is I might fail and give my roasting. You might taste the roasting in the cup rather than tasting the bean quality and the processing quality in the cup. So for our SCA cupping procedures, that means roasting through first crack, at or near the end of first crack, with the whole bean color of 58 and a ground color of 63 on the Agtron Gourmet Color Scale. Okay, so closing thoughts and questions. We made it. It was very fun sharing these coffees. I wish that we had more. Whenever you're in a group like this, you're limited with time and space. But had we had dark roasted coffees and light roasted coffees, and we did have some of these different processing methods, Arabica and Robusta, it would have been really fun just to continue to talk about cupping for green purchase buying decisions, which is very much a cupping standard protocol. Cupping for quality control internally or product development using a triangular method or A/B in-out comparison. There's lots of different ways that we could go about cupping. And there are also many things in this presentation that appear like they would be rules. However, I really want to be clear and just repeat that I'm showing just how we are in this procedure of growth as we continue to cup coffees and explore what they're capable of. And as sensory professionals, we are always open to new insights and perspectives. We don't have a definitive decision on that coffee, nor do we come in and just override with our expectations of that coffee. So thank you for approaching this time with humility and encouraging the others in the cupping session with us. If you have any questions, please send them to me, contact me, drop them into the show notes. I would love to help you explore cupping, explore Robusta Canephora, explore Arabica, new processing, and as always, if you would like to find resources or other presentations, they're available at my sca.training blog, and the rock.coffee lab has resources and equipment. Reach out, and until next time, it's been great. Keep making life better, friends, growing, learning, and sharing with a friend. I'll see you next time.